Hello everyone, welcome back to our lecture series. Today we'll be talking about lipids and proteins are associated with biological membranes. What basically we'll be talking about here is to talk about lipids, classes of lipids, and then we'll talk about the biological membranes. And let's just take it off from there immediately. What are lipids? That's the first question we need to ask ourselves, because we need to understand the nature of these biomolecules before we know what they are. So lipids have a common definition. We just say that a heterogeneous class of organic substances that are classified based on their solubility. We usually use their solubility basically to classify them based on their solubility properties. And that solubility property is that most of them are soluble in aprotic organic solvent and insoluble in polar solvents like water. So most of them are insoluble. They're insoluble in water, but they're soluble in aprotic. Aprotic means does not produce a proton. Those organic solvents that do not produce proton in solution or that do not liberate hydrogen ion. That's what we mean by aprotic. So those solvents include diethyl ethyl chloroform, methylene chloride, and acetone. These are all organic compounds that do not release proton in solution. So they are highly non-polar. So we can always say that, lipids are non-polar because usually they don't do so. Although they have some other thing a little bit peculiar we're going to talk about in their chemical nature. All right. So good examples we're going to be talking about. We'll talk about a lot of examples of them are like the fats and oil always come to mind, which is basically the triglyceride, the cholesterol, and a good other examples like the steroid hormones are a good example, the bile acids, and a couple of other examples will come to mind. Now, one striking thing we need to understand about the nature of lipids is that they are amphipathic in nature. An amphipathic molecule is the molecule, we talked about this in the first chapter, is a molecule that has both a polar head and then a non-polar tail. A polar head is because it has a functional group that is polar. In the case of a typical example of a fatty acid, let's talk about a fatty acid. So if I'm going to draw the structure of a typical fatty acid, a fatty acid has a carboxylic group, of course. I'm going to use the minus because at physiological pH, they are ionized at physiological pH. So if this is palmitic acid, let me just draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Palmitic acid has 16 carbons. So this is a typical example. Now, what can you see? Of course, you see this is ionized. This is the polar head. I'm going to label it. So this point is the polar head. This is the polar head. And then from this point is the non-polar tail. This is the non-polar tail. And the reason why this tail is just a hydrocarbon tail, it doesn't have anything to make it polar. And this is the main reason why most fatty acids are insoluble in water, because they have long tails, long hydrocarbon tail that makes them really very non-polar. So any molecule that has this combination of polar and non-polar part is what we call an amphipathic molecule. That's what we call it. So this is what I've just drawn is palmitic acid. Palmitic acid. Palmitic acid is a fatty acid. All right, let's take it to the next. Now, we need to understand the functions of liquid. Now, every biomolecules we'll be studying, if you look at the pattern, we always try to understand what are the functions, what are the biological functions of this, because they are biomolecules. So the first thing we need to talk about is that because these guys are very insoluble in water, they repel water, that's what, and these characteristics provide a protective wax coating that is found in plants. So most of the time you see this wax coating in plants that provide that protection for them. It's because they are these lipids are highly insoluble or non-polar in nature. Now they are energy-rich compound, of course. Now they offer a more concentrated source of energy than even carbohydrate. We'll see when by the time we look at the metabolism of lipids, particularly the catabolism, the breakdown, or what we call the beta oxidation of lipids, we find that in breaking down of a molecule of, let's say, palmitic acid gives you a lot more ATP than what you do when you break a molecule of glucose. All right. So then, some of them form important structural components. Yes, they do form important structural components, especially the cell membrane. The outermost part of the animal cell is covered by the cell membrane, which protects, of course, protection. and not just protection, controls transport of molecules like we're going to, that goes in and outside the cell. Some of them constitute what we call the signaling molecule. Signaling molecule like the hormones. Some of these guys are bioactive like hormones, but not typically classed as hormones. But a good example are the eicosanoids. We're going to see the class of eicosanoids like the prostaglandins, the leukotrienes that have strong biological effect when they are released in the human body. And then transport. Some of them are a good example, like the lipoproteins help in the transport of fatty acid in the bloodstream. The lipoproteins are good examples are the LDL, the low density lipoprotein, the high density lipoprotein, and all the rest of them. And they also provide insulation in animals. Yes, of course, they provide warmth because they are not good conductors. They tend to provide warmth in animals. So these are the brief functions of fatty acid that you're going to know. So now, how do we classify this? There are many ways to classify fatty acid. There is no better way to classify them. But in the course of this class, I'm going to be classifying them more structurally related. So I'm going to say that is the open chain lipids that we can say they are aliphatic in nature. They're open. And then the fused ring, those of them that have the ring. And the ring form is based on the what we call the steroid nucleus. We're going to talk about that. So under the open chain lipids, we're going to see the fatty acids, the triglycerols or the triglyceride, according to TG, the sphingolipids, the phosphoracylglycerol or the phosphoglyceride, according to PG, I didn't write it here, and then the glycolipids. The fused ring ones are the cholesterol. Cholesterol is like the building block of the fused ring, because every other ones here, like the steroids, are derived from the cholesterol. The bile acids are all derived from the cholesterol. So let's now start from the fatty acid. Fatty acids are unbranched chain carboxylic acid. Like the first thing I drew here was the structure of the fatty acid. I told you the one thing that is common with them is that they are carboxylic acids. Of course, carboxylic acids have this functional group, a carbonyl carbon that is linked to an OH group as well. So this is the functional group of the carboxylic acid. Now, however, their chain length is between 12 to 20. And in fact, most of them that exist naturally exist in even number. Now, they are derived from the hydrolysis of fat, vegetable, and oils, that's derived from the hydrolysis of triglyceride. You can say the hydrolysis of triglyceride or phosphotriglyceride. When you break them down, you find out when you break triglyceride down, now triglyceride means it has one glycerol and 3 fatty acids esterified to it. So when you break it down, you're going to get the fatty acid and then the glycerol separate. They are amphipathic in nature. What it means is that they have a polar head and non-polar tail. I have already explained that. And there are 2 main classes of fatty acid. The first ones are the unsaturated. The unsaturated one must have at least 1 carbon-to-carbon double bonds. And then the saturated will always have only single bonds. And we know that the discourse about the nutritional benefit of both the double bond, or rather the saturated fatty acid, and the saturated ones is an important discourse that unsaturated ones are thought to contribute highly in cardiovascular diseases, whereas it is much more safer to eat the unsaturated ones. So this is the structure of some common fatty acids. Now this is palmitic acid, the one I drew earlier when I did the example. Palmitic acid has 6 carbons and is fully saturated. This is stearic acid, is C18. So this is C18. This is actually C18. This is, sorry, I said it, C16. This is C18. Now this is C18, but it has a double bond, and then it has a double bond. So we usually say 1. That's what we usually say. 1 double bond. It has 1 double bond. And then this is linoleic acid, has 2 double bonds, but it's C18. This is alpha linoleic, 3 double bond. Arachidonic acid is 20, C20, but it has 4 double bonds. Now when you look at it, you see the addition of a double bond here in this fatty acid puts a kink. Look at them. The 1 double bond makes it a little bit bent. If you put another double bond, it makes it bent. This makes it bent. And this affects their what? Their dispersion properties. Now, the higher the double bond, the lower the fluidity of this fatty acid, and then the lower the boiling and melting point, as we're going to see as we move on. So these are some naturally occurring saturated fatty acid. The lauric acid is 12, myristic is 14, palmitic is 16, stearic is 18, arachidonic is 20. Now, this arachidic. Remember, let's look at this. This is arachidonic when it have 4 double bonds. So the arachidic means no double bond at all. and it is 20. And if you look at this, the higher the molecular weight of this carbon, you see, increases what? Their dispersion. And as the dispersion increases, or what you call the dispersion, which is the only intermolecular force they have, now what happens? The boiling and melting point increases as you go down, this way. So I have also some examples of naturally occurring saturated fatty acid here. Now this is C16, is PAM. So when you add one double bond to palmitic acid, it becomes palmitoleic acid. So here it has one double bond, and the double bond is located in carbon 9. So this delta notation tells you where the double bond is located. C16 here means the total carbon, number of carbon. 1 means it has only one double bond. And now you look at the boiling point. Now if you go down, this is 18 carbons. Oleic acid has 18 carbons and one double bond at carbon number 9. Now you see the boiling point. Now the reason why this one is higher than this is because, remember, dispersion increases, or you can say the intermolecular force increases with increase what? Increase in what? Molecular weight. Molecular weight. So dispersion increases with increase in molecular weight. So the only thing they have here is London dispersion forces. So the dispersion force increases with increase in molecular weight. That's why you see that. This is 18 carbons, this is this. So the single double bond doesn't have a lot of effect, and therefore the effect here being encountered is the extra 2 carbon makes it to have a stronger dispersion force than this, and that is why this is actually has higher boiling point than this. Now, but as you go down to look at it, from here now you see this is 18, this is 18, and this is 18. If you add another double bond between 9 and 12, look at what happens. The melting point even drops more. And adding another double bond, triple bond here in linoleic acid, it even drops more. Now look at what happens. This is carbon 20, which would have ordinarily increased 20 carbons, increased the dispersion. But because it has 4 double bonds in carbon number 5, 8, 11, and 14, look at what happens here. The melting point even drops further. So the fluidity of this fatty acid increases with increase in what? In the double bonds. So unsaturated fatty acid, like I said, the cis isomer predominate. The cis isomer is what predominates in this double bond. They don't usually have the trans isomer, usually more as dangerous as the saturated ones. Now the cis double bond, like I told you earlier, puts a kink in the long chain hydrocarbon tail. Now, of course, the shape of the trans fatty acid looks like that of the saturated fatty acid too. That is why it is also being discouraged that trans fatty acid can also be a strong causative factor in cardiovascular diseases. Now, fatty acid will have lower melting point. Unsaturated fatty acid have lower melting point than their saturated counterpart. And the reason why they do that is because of what? The reason why that happens is because of what? The double bond that puts a kink and make them to be even much more hollow. Alright, so that they don't pack. Now, if you have, let's say, let me draw this. If I have this and draw another one, you see it is packing so well that no space is created. Now, assuming I have something like a cis conformation. So cis conformation will be this. So and I have another one here. Perhaps if I want to have another one here, that one might be, let me draw it this way. You see, it's not going to pack well. If I have another one here, you see, the packing is not compact. So because the packing is not compact, it creates a lot of spaces, and these spaces reduces the dispersion, and the reduction in dispersion means reduction in their what? Melting and boiling points. All right. So fatty acid notation. How do we now show a fatty acid in a short form? That's what I mean. Now, usually write a number, a colon, and another number. Now, the first number you write indicates the number of carbon. Now, in this case, 18-0 means it has 18 carbons and no double bond. And this is stearic acid. In oleic acid, it's 18-1. 18-1 means it has 18 carbon and 1 double bond. And this is oleic acid. So this is a shortcut in which you can. So if I want to write palmitic acid is just completely saturated. So it's going to be 16-1. It has 1 double bond. So no, my bad. 16-0. So this is palmitic acid. Palmitic acid. it is completely saturated, no double bond. Then if you want to write palmitoleic acid, palmitoleic is 16, but it has one double bond. So this is palmitoleic acid. So this is how you do these fatty acid notations. All right. So triglycerols or triglyceride, that's the next thing we talk about. We've talked about fatty acid. Now, what are triglycerols? Triglycerols are lipids that are formed by the esterification of 3 fatty acid to a glycerol. Of course, it has a polar head. The polar head is formed by the ester group. It forms the polar part. Whereas whereas the tail is formed by the polar long chain from the fatty acid. Of course, this is accumulated in the adipose tissue, and it provides means of storing excess fatty acid in that adipose tissue. Now, the ester linkage, of course, if it's in the digestive system, the ester linkage is hydrolyzed by lipase, and when this thing happens, it releases what? It releases the glycerol and the corresponding fatty acid that is esterified to the triglyceride. Now, it also serves as a concentrated store of metabolic energy. Of course, when you break it down, you get glycerol. Glycerol can enter the glycolytic pathway to generate energy. You get fatty acid, which is catabolized at the beta oxidation pathway that generates huge amount of energy. So they constitute a very huge energy store. How are they formed actually? So I'm going to give you a broad picture of how a triglyceride is formed. A broad picture. Of course, I told you triglycerides are formed from what? Glycerol and what? 3 fatty acids. So if I have my glycerol, of course, at this level, you should know how to draw glycerol. This is the structure of glycerol. That's what we call it, triacyl glycerol. We call this glycerol. Glycerol can be called propane 1,2,3 triol. That's the scientific name. Assuming you're going to do IUPAC nomenclature, it's propane 1,2,3 triol. So it's a triol. Now, if I connect this with 3 fatty acids, I'm going to use 3. Now, I'm going to just draw, in the body, they exist as ionized because they're polar at neutral pH. They're ionized at neutral pH. So I'm going to use just the one that is ionized. And I'm going to use arrow group to represent the long fatty acid chain. So what is going to happen? This guy is going to get esterified to this. Remember, what is esterification? Carboxylic acid ester is the same thing. They are formed when an alcohol reacts to the carboxylic acid. So they form the ester linkage. So what is going to happen? Of course, this is going to result, each time is going to result to the loss of, in each of the cases, there will be result to 1 molecule of water being lost when each of them esterifies. But I'm not going to be talking about that. I'm just going to show you what is going to form. So this is going to give me, I'm going to put my arrow here so that I have enough space to do this. So I'm going to have my glycerol chain again. Remember, this is glycerol or propane 1,2,3 triol. Now this is representing my fatty acid. So I'm going to put Fa, and then I'm going to put the carbon chain of glycerol. Now each of these glycerol will form the ester group. Remember, ester means you have a carbon, CO, a carbon, this looks like an eta, and then another one here, a carbonyl carbon. So this is going to form, let's say, this R1 of the first. Remember, these 3 molecules of different different fatty acid, not amino acid, fatty acid. So this will form another one. So I'll call this R2, and this is going to form another one, and I'll call this R3. So this is what we call a triacyl glycerol or triglyceride, whatever you call it. So let me write it short, triglyceride or triacyl glycerol, TG. So this is how it is formed. From 3 molecules of fatty acid and a molecule of glycerol will form your triglycerides. Saponification. Now, fatty acids can undergo some reactions. One of the things they could do is saponification. Simply means making soap. What does it simply mean? It's an alkaline hydrolysis of a triglycerol or triglyceride with either a sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide. What happens there? You are breaking it down. A triglycerol, remember, I just showed you that a triglycerol is made from 3 fatty acids and glycerol. So when you break it down, you're going to get them back. So now in the body, what happens by the enzymes? The enzyme lipase uses water molecule to hydraulically attack these bonds and break. When you break it down by the enzyme hydrolysis using water, you're going to get your glycerol and then your 3 fatty acids. However, in saponification, what happens? In saponification here, you are using, instead of using enzyme now, you're using this strong alkali to break it down. So what they do is that they break down, you also have your glycerol released, and then you have this carboxylate salt. So here you have sodium carboxylate salt, and depending what the name is, if it is palmitate, if each of them is palmitic acid, you're going to have sodium palmitate. If it is stearic acid, you're going to have sodium stearate, and as the case might be. So you now have a sodium salt, and then this is, in this side, you're going to have fatty acid. And this sodium salt, of course, are what we call the soaps. This is what we call the soaps that you use in water. So soaps are form water-soluble salt. Of course, when you mix them with hard water, because they precipitate, calcium and magnesium will form precipitate with them. Of course, glycerol is used in manufacturing of creams and lotions that people use every day. Now we go to the next class, the phosphatidic acid. These are compounds in which two fatty acids and a phosphoric acid has been esterified to each other. Now look at what happens here now. You have, now in this case, you have a fatty acid that is esterified to 2-glycerol, and one of those things you also have is a phosphoric acid will now occupy. Remember, a glycerol will form an ester with one here. It will form another ester with another one here. Let's say no, I should start from R1. This is going to be R2. And then you're going to have what? You're going to have a phosphoric acid esterified at this point. So let me put H and H. So this is what we call a phosphatidic acid, and it is a backbone for most what we can call them phospholipids. Those lipids that have phosphate group. That's exactly what it means. And of course, you know that the true Lewis structure of phosphoric acid is that it is a triprotic molecule. It can release 3 hydrogen. Oh, I don't have space to draw that again. I shouldn't have drawn this, but okay, I can draw it. So this is it. It has this OH, OH, OH. So this 3 hydrogen ion can be released. So it can ionize in water, releasing 3 hydrogen ion and forming this. So you're gonna have, okay, you're gonna have this P, you're gonna have this double bond here. You're gonna have this will now be ionized, this will be ionized, and when it releases. So it's a triprotic acid, and itself can now form an ester bond with another type of alcohol. Now, phosphatidyl esters, or you can call them the phosphoacylglycerol or phosphoglyceride. Their basic unit is the phosphatidic acid. Like I told you, the phosphatidic acid is when you have a phosphate group attached in one of the OH groups of glycerol. And part of what you're going to see is part of those molecules that are going to form is what we call the phosphoglyceride or the phosphoacylglycerol. Like I told you, they're also called the phospholytic. So their classification depends on the nature of the alcohol that is also attached to this point. You see, another alcohol can be attached to this point to form an ester group with this. And depending on what that is, so depending on the identity of that molecule, that will give it its name. So the nature of the fatty acid in the molecule varies widely in structure. Some of them can be long, non-polar and hydrophobic tails. Then they have polar, highly hydrophilic head, because the phosphate group here is highly hydrophilic. You form the head. You remember the ester bond here is also a polar head. The ester bond here is a polar head. And they are amphipathic in nature because they have long tails. The long tails will make them to be amphipathic in nature. Now, the phosphoglyceride can contain one of the following alcohols attached to the phosphate group. If it is a choline, we usually call it phosphatidyl-choline. If it is ethanolamine, we call it phosphatidyl-ethanolamine. If it is serine, we call it phosphatidyl-serine. If it's glycerol, which we talked about, or a sugar, it will also phosphatidyl-inositol. So depending on the nature of this, and this is the choline is a quaternary amino acid because here it is charged. Now you know the nitrogen here contains three methyl groups and another bond, so it has SS bond. So usually the former charge is +1. Here again, ethanolamine here has, this is like ethanol. You now replace one of the hydrogen of the methyl group with ammonium ion. That's what we call it, ethanolamine, ethanol and amine group. And then this is serine. Serine is an amino acid. It's just an alanine that has OH group. And then it is ionized at physiological pH. So if you add any of these to those phosphate group to the phosphate group, it can change the name to various ones we're going to see in this chapter. Now, the polar head group is usually charged, remember, because of the charge is provided by the amino group or amino alcohol that is attached at the pH, at the phosphate group. So the phosphate group is ionized at neutral pH, of course. The positively charged amino group is contributed by an amino alcohol esterified to this. So esterified to the what? To the backbone. Now let's see an example here. This is phosphatidylcholine. Remember, this has a polar tail here, which is a fatty acid, another fatty acid. Now it has a phosphate group that attached to the choline. This is the choline now. And that gives it the name phosphatidylcholine. Again, these are other ones that we can see. This has 2 amino acids attached here. Now this is ethanolamine. It becomes the name phosphatidyletanolamine. So you have the backbone attached to, you now attach ethanolamine to this phosphate group. Again, when you have like this one, now look at this one. This is an interesting one. This is a glycerol that has a phosphate group on both sides. Each of the phosphate group is esterified to what? Fatty acid. We call it diphosphoglycerol, and this is called cardiolipine. Diphosphotidylglycerol or cardiolipine. Again, you can have another one here. You have a phosphate group that is now attached to what? A glycerol. We call it phosphatidylglycerol. And then it can also be attached to a sugar. Remember, sugar like glucose is an alcohol. Remember, we define carbohydrates as polyhydroxy alcohol, right? So they have alcohol. So if you esterify a sugar alcohol to this guy, this becomes phosphatidylinositol. So the nature of this, or the identity of these phosphoglycerols, are determined by the nature of that amino alcohol or which alcohol that is attached to it. It can be either the amino alcohols, the 3 we just talked about, or it can be sugar, which is an alcohol, or it can be glycerol itself. So that is what determines the identity. The waxes. Waxes are another class of open chain lipid that contains mixture of long chain esters and long chain fatty acid. That is the combination. Long chain fatty acid and long chain esters. That's the combination in this case. So now you see, this is Merecyl Serotek. Now it has a long chain alcohol coming this way and a long chain fatty acid. So that's why, and we only find this in plants where they provide, because they are highly nonpolar. Highly nonpolar because of the length of this hydrocarbon chain. They provide this protection and then insulation for organisms that have them. So again, this is another good example. All right. So the sphingolipid. See, the sphingolipid in this case now have a special backbone. The backbone they have is not, they do not contain glycerol. It's important we said it. In the sphingolipid, they do not, you see, the ones we've been talking about contain glycerol. They do not contain glycerol. Instead, they do not have, let me just say have. They do not have glycerol. Instead, what we have here is a different type of long chain amino alcohol called the sphingosine. This sphingosine is a long chain amino alcohol that contains 18 carbons. It has a double bond between carbon 4 and carbon 5, and then it has an amino group at carbon number 2. So if you ladder this 1, 2, 3, 4, it has a double bond between carbon 4 and 5. It has an amino group in carbon number 2 here. This is the amino group, and then it has an alcohol group in carbon number 1, the primary alcohol group at this carbon number 1. So this is what we call, this is the sphingosine. In this case, the sphingosine forms the backbone and not the glycerol anymore. The ones we've been talking about has only the glycerol. Now, so what do we know? What now happens? Now, it cannot. The sphingomyelin looks like one of the basic structure of the sphingolipid. What do we have in sphingomyelin? In sphingomyelin, you have the backbone, which is your what? Your sphingosine. The sphingosine has an amide group because here it is esterified through an amide bond to a fatty acid, and then and the phosphate group is now attached at the primary alcohol at carbon 1 here and this phosphate group is also attached to another quaternary amino alcohol, in this case a choline. So when a choline is attached to this phosphate group, and this phosphate group is attached to the primary alcohol group at this point, and you have an fatty acid here, you have a structure we call what? The sphingomyelin. This is the simplest of the lipid. So it's the primary alcohol of sphingosine. It's esterified to a phosphoric acid, and it's also esterified to the choline. So then the glycolipid. The glycolipid, now, okay, I didn't talk about it. You see, now, when you, without the phosphate group here, you call this the ceramide. A ceramide is just a sphingomycin that has an amide bond to a fatty acid. Is the ceramide. So in the ceramide now, if you now attach phosphate group and a choline, it becomes a sphingomyelin. Now, something is interesting. In glycolipid, the glycolipid does not contain phosphate group. They do not have phosphate group. That is another way you can differentiate between it. Both of them are sphingolipids. Both of them are called sphingolipids. But if you want to differentiate it with the other class, we can say these ones here are sphingophospholipid because they contain phosphate group. However, the glycolipids are just sphingolipids. They don't contain phosphate group. So what happens here? Now again, what happens is that you have your ceramide. This is the ceramide, this is the long chain amino alcohol, which is a sphingosine. So sphingosine is connected to the OH through an eta bond here, connected to this glucose molecule, because this is glucose, this glucose molecule. Remember, this is, now remember again, that is also connected through the amide bond to what? To a fatty acid. The fatty acid is there, so this is the fatty acid portion connected to this point. Now this is your sphingosine. And this is glucose. So this is what we call the glucocerebroside. You can also, if you have the galactose attached to it, it can also be the galactocerebroside. So the main difference here is that you have a ceramide that is, remember the ceramide is the basic structure that has the fatty acid at the amide bond, and then connecting it through the primary alcohol to a glucose or a galactose will form a glycolipid as well. So now, there are another more complex type of glycolipid. In these ones, we call them the ganglioside. So the glycolipid, the complex carbohydrate moiety, they contain, now, I said they contain glycolipids with a complex carbohydrate moiety that contain more than 3 sugars. That's one thing peculiar with these guys. They contain more than 3 sugar moieties. So we can say sugar residues. And one of them must be a sialic acid. A sialic acid is a type of sugar molecule. Now, it is usually acidic in nature. Most of them are acidic in nature because they are actually charged at neutral pH. So when you look at it, this is a different type of one. So now, this is, let's start from what we know first. Now, this is a molecule of sphingosine. This is sphingosine itself. It has, this is sphingosine. So the sphingosine is attached, remember this is sphingosine attached to a fatty acid at this point. This is the fatty acid. Now, so this tells you that this is a ceramide. Now the OH group is now attached to a glucose molecule attached to another glucose molecule. Now this is called the GM3. If you have another, glucose to galactose, this GM3. When you have that connected to another one, N-acetylglycosamine, it becomes GM2. And then when you connect another D-galactose to it, it becomes GM1. Now look at what happens here. See, these are series of type of amino sugars. Now let me try to explain them. This is D-galactose because this is position up. The OH group is up. Now this is D-galactosamine. In galactosamine, what do you have? You have that the OH group here was removed. And now it forms an amide bond with a methyl group. So this is acetyl group. That's what we call it. N-acetyl glucosamine. So that's what we call it. Just N-acetyl galactosamine. Sorry. Yeah, this N-acetyl glycosamine. So this is amino sugar. And then this is galactose and this is glucose. Now, each of them must, remember, I say here, they contain more than 3 sugar moieties. That's what we know them. More than 3. So they must contain 2 and this sialic acid. This sialic acid, the actual name of sialic acid is N-acetyl uramic acid. We can call it uramic death or uramic acid. In uramic acid, what is special about it? Now look at this. In carbon number 1 here has a carboxylic group here. And this goes to have, look at it again, at this place, it forms an acetyl carbon here. This is acetyl group forming an amide bond here. So this is an amide bond at this point. And then it contains, look at this now, this looks like a glycerol that is attached to this carbon number. What you see this carbon? This is, of course, if you count this now, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, this carbon number 6 here. So you find out that this is another attachment at this point that forms a kind of glycerol that's attached, and this glycerol is actually positioned inside the glucose moiety. So this big molecule is what we call a ganglioside. And of course, if it is only with these two, we call it GM3. If it contains these 3, it is GM2. And if it contains all of them, we call it GM1. However, you're not expected to memorize this kind of complex structure, but you should be able to recognize them, recognize those fingers in the fatty acid, the amide bond, and which of the glucose molecule that is attached to it. The steroid. Steroids are the first thing we need to consider in the fused. Remember, we said the open chain and the fused ring. Now, the steroid, lipids that have characteristics fused ring structure. Now, the first 3-ring structure looks like a hexagon, and then another pentagon. So the 3 6-membered rings and 1 5-membered ring. It is important steroid. It is important because it forms the basic structure of most sex hormones and cholesterol. Of course, cholesterol is the commonest of the steroid. It occurs in the cell membranes, highly hydrophilic in nature, and acts as a precursor of most other steroids. And it plays an important role in development of atherosclerosis because it's expected that too much cholesterol can lead to formation of atheromatous plaque at the arteries, and that could lead to atherosclerosis. And we're going to see the structure in the next page. So look at the structure here. So this is the typical steroid nucleus. We call this the steroid nucleus. This is the steroid nucleus. So it has the hexagon that are fused, and another hexagon that is up, and then a pentagon. That's the kind of way you need to memorize. So for cholesterol has an OH group here, a methyl group here, a methyl group here, and then it has an 8-carbon group here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is what it has. So this is cholesterol. So now cholesterol, like I said, is a precursor of most other steroids. What it means is that it is from here that you can make other steroids like the sex hormones. This is the testosterone, this is the estradiol, and this is the progesterone. Now, it is basic. You must have to know, you must memorize the structure of cholesterol. Yeah, you have to memorize that. It's easy to do that. You have to memorize the structure of cholesterol. However, you should be able to recognize the structure of other related ones like the testosterone, the estradiol, and the progesterone. And in fact, look at that. So this is plays an important role in male reproductive system. The other two plays an important role in female reproductive system. And at this point, we've come to the end of this lecture. Thank you again for listening, and do have a wonderful day ahead of you. And bye at this point.